Welcome to Presidential Papers. Have you ever wondered how the United States became the nation it is today? This channel dives deep into the decisions and policies of America's presidents, revealing the stories that built the nation. Backed by rigorous research and academic insights, we simplify complex history into engaging narratives. Whether you're a history enthusiast or just curious about America's foundations, this is the place for you. Join us as we uncover the secrets of the past, one presidential policy at a time. Subscribe now to start the journey. Few policies in recent history have ignited as much debate as the Trump administration's border wall initiative. Framed as a solution to illegal immigration, drug trafficking, and national security, the border wall became a symbol of divisive immigration politics during Donald Trump's presidency. While it sought to bolster national security by physically reinforcing U.S. Mexico border defenses, its implications went far beyond the concrete and steel barriers erected along the southern border. This policy polarized the nation, sparking passionate discussions about its political, social, and environmental impacts. Politically, the border wall policy galvanized Trump's voter base while simultaneously intensifying partisan conflict in Congress. Domestically, it represented a clear departure from previous administrations' approaches to immigration, shifting the focus from reform to restriction. Socially, the policy created widespread fear and uncertainty within immigrant communities, affecting not only undocumented individuals but also lawful residents and asylum seekers. Meanwhile, on an environmental level, the construction of the wall disrupted natural ecosystems, threatening wildlife migration and biodiversity in fragile desert regions. This policy's legacy continues to resonate, influencing current immigration debates and U.S. relations with neighboring countries. The controversy surrounding it highlights the complex interplay between national security, humanitarian obligations, and environmental stewardship. In the sections that follow, we will explore these three dimensions of the border wall policy in depth, using academic research and real-world examples to assess its long-term impacts. Stay tuned as we unravel the intricate implications of this landmark policy. The first reason supporting the conclusion that the Trump administration's border wall policy had significant political impacts lies in its role as a catalyst for domestic and international political debates. This section explores how the border wall policy influenced U.S. immigration politics, deepened domestic political divides, and strained U.S. Mexico relations. The Trump administration's border wall initiative was a central theme of Donald Trump's 2016 presidential campaign, promising to construct a Great Wall to curb illegal immigration, and insisting that Mexico would finance it. The proposal symbolized a hard-line stance on immigration policy. According to Laidler 2023, Trump's campaign rhetoric, which often portrayed immigrants as threats to national security and economic stability, energized his voter base, particularly among white, lower-income Americans who felt disenfranchised by globalization and liberal immigration policies. Polling data from The Economist YouGov 2015 showed that nearly half of Americans viewed illegal immigration as a significant issue, and support for building a wall stood at 46% early in the campaign. However, by 2016, opposition to the wall had grown to 58%, reflecting the divisive nature of the proposal. Domestically, the wall became a polarizing issue that exemplified the broader ideological chasm between Republicans and Democrats, as noted by Keck N. Clua Losada 2021. The border wall project was not merely an immigration control measure, but a tool of authoritarian neoliberal governance. It aimed to discipline border populations and reinforce anti-immigrant sentiment, while advancing a neoliberal agenda. This dual purpose deepened political divides, as the wall's proponents framed it as essential for national security and economic protectionism, while opponents criticized it as xenophobic and fiscally irresponsible. The 35-day government shutdown in 2018-2019, the longest in U.S. history, highlighted the intense political conflict surrounding the wall. The standoff arose from Trump's demand for $5.7 billion in funding for the wall, a demand that Democrats in Congress vehemently opposed. This impasse underscored the extent to which the border wall had become a symbol of broader partisan struggles. On the international stage, the border wall policy strained U.S. Mexico relations. During the campaign, Trump repeatedly asserted that Mexico would pay for the wall, a claim that Mexican leaders, including then-President Enrique Peña Nieto, categorically rejected. According to Laidler 2023, this rhetoric not only soured diplomatic relations, but also fostered anti-American sentiment in Mexico. By 2017, 65% of Mexicans held unfavorable views of the United States, compared to just 30% in 2015. Moreover, the policy's implementation, including the Remain in Mexico program, which forced asylum seekers to wait in Mexico while their cases were processed in U.S. courts, exacerbated tensions. This program placed significant logistical and humanitarian burdens on Mexican border cities, further straining bilateral relations. The border wall policy's divisive nature extended to trade relations as well. Trump's frequent criticism of NAFTA, and his insistence on renegotiating the agreement into the USMCA, reflected his broader strategy of using immigration and trade as intertwined leverage points. Despite these challenges, the border wall policy was politically expedient for Trump. It served as a populist mechanism to galvanize his base by framing immigration as a security threat, and portraying himself as a defender of American sovereignty. As Gravel 2022 notes, support for the wall was highest in counties where Trump performed well in the 2016 and 2020 elections, particularly in areas near the U.S. Mexico border and regions with higher proportions of white, non-Hispanic residents. This geographic and demographic pattern underscores the policy's role in consolidating support among key voter blocs, even as it alienated other segments of the population. Critics of the border wall policy often argue that it was more symbolic than substantive, questioning its effectiveness in addressing illegal immigration. Social media platforms and opinion pieces frequently highlighted the incomplete nature of the wall. Only 450 miles of new barriers were constructed during Trump's tenure, much of which replaced existing structures. Additionally, fact-checking organizations debunked Trump's claims about the wall's impact on crime and drug trafficking, pointing out that most drugs enter the U.S. through legal ports of entry, not remote border areas. For example, PolitiFact highlighted that 90% of heroin smuggled into the United States was seized at legal checkpoints, a statistic at odds with Trump's narrative. However, these criticisms did little to diminish the wall's political utility. As Keck and Klua Losada 2021 argue, the wall's primary function was not to solve immigration issues, but to serve as a potent symbol of Trump's broader political agenda. Supporters of the wall often cited national security as a justification arguing that it would deter illegal crossings and reduce crime. For instance, in a 2019 Gallup poll, 80% of Americans favored enhanced border security measures, even if they did not explicitly support the wall. This sentiment was particularly strong among Trump's core supporters, who viewed the wall as a tangible manifestation of his commitment to America First policies. The wall's symbolic significance was further amplified by Trump's use of social media, where he frequently defended the project and attacked its critics. This digital strategy helped sustain the wall's prominence in political discourse, even as its practical implementation faced obstacles. Trump's ability to craft a narrative around the wall as a symbol of American strength and sovereignty ensured its relevance, even when logistical and legal challenges arose. The political consequences of the border wall extended beyond the Trump administration. As Laidler 2023 notes, the wall became a defining issue in U.S. immigration policy, shaping debates during the 2020 presidential campaign, and influencing the Biden administration's approach to border security. While President Joe Biden halted construction of the wall upon taking office, he faced criticism from both sides of the political spectrum. Progressive Democrats accused him of not doing enough to reverse Trump-era policies, while Republicans argued that his actions undermined border security. This ongoing controversy illustrates how the border wall has become a durable symbol of America's polarized political landscape. The Biden administration's challenges in balancing security concerns with humanitarian priorities underscore the lasting impact of Trump's policy on immigration discourse. This section concludes that the Trump administration's border wall policy had profound political impacts. Domestically, it deepened partisan divisions and served as a rallying point for Trump's base. Internationally, it strained U.S. Mexico relations and fueled anti-American sentiment. Despite its limited practical achievements, the wall's symbolic power ensured its centrality in political debates, both during and after Trump's presidency. These political consequences highlight the wall's role as more than a physical barrier. It was a potent political tool that reshaped U.S. immigration discourse and amplified existing divides. Furthermore, the border wall's influence on public opinion, voter behavior, and bilateral diplomacy demonstrates its significance as a political artifact, whose ramifications extend far beyond its incomplete construction. The second reason supporting the conclusion that the Trump administration's border wall policy had significant social impacts lies in its exacerbation of human rights violations against migrants and refugees. This section will explore how specific policies, such as family separation under the zero-tolerance policy, and the migrant protection protocols, remain in Mexico policy, not only intensified the challenges faced by vulnerable populations, but also highlighted systemic issues within the U.S. immigration framework. By drawing on academic research, as well as responses and critiques from social media and broader discourse, we will demonstrate how these policies created lasting political, social, and humanitarian repercussions. The Zero Tolerance Policy (ZTP), introduced in April 2018, is a prime example of the Trump administration's aggressive approach to immigration control. As outlined in Garrett's 2020 analysis, the ZTP mandated the separation of migrant children from their parents upon apprehension at the U.S. Mexico border. The policy's explicit objective was to deter families from seeking asylum in the United States, particularly those from Central America's Northern Triangle countries El Salvador, Honduras, and Guatemala. Under this policy, children were placed in detention centers, managed by the Office of Refugee Resettlement or, while their parents faced expedited deportation proceedings. According to Garrett 2020, this practice left thousands of children stranded in the United States, with limited opportunities for reunification. The consequences of the ZTP were devastating. Reports documented severe psychological trauma among separated children, many of whom experienced anxiety, depression, and post-traumatic stress disorder (PTSD). Garrett, 2020. Moreover, the detention centers, often referred to as galleras, iceboxes or Ferreras, dog kennels, due to their inhumane conditions, came under intense scrutiny for inadequate medical care, overcrowding, and insufficient access to basic necessities. In one widely reported case, a 6-year-old Guatemalan girl died of dehydration and septic shock after being held in U.S. Customs and Border Protection (CBP) custody. Such incidents highlighted the systemic failures of these facilities and fueled calls for their reform. These issues prompted widespread criticism from human rights organizations, including Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch, which labeled the family separation policy as a violation of international human rights standards. Additionally, the American Academy of Pediatrics issued a statement condemning the ZTP, emphasizing that family separation could cause irreparable harm to children's health and development. These critiques underscored the broader societal implications of the policy. As public outrage grew and protests erupted across the United States, the Migrant Protection Protocols (MPP), implemented in January 2019, further exacerbated the plight of migrants and asylum seekers. This policy required asylum applicants to remain in Mexico, while their cases were adjudicated in U.S. immigration courts. According to Garrett 2020, the MPP forced more than 55,000 asylum seekers into makeshift camps in dangerous Mexican border cities, where they faced heightened risks of violence, exploitation, and human trafficking. Data from human rights organizations revealed that over 600 violent attacks, including kidnappings and sexual assaults, were documented against asylum seekers subject to the MPP. Jordan, 2019. These conditions underscored the policy's failure to provide a safe and humane environment for vulnerable populations. The challenges faced by asylum seekers under the MPP extended beyond physical violence. Many migrants were denied access to legal representation, as U.S. immigration courts often operated remotely and required asylum seekers to attend hearings via video link from makeshift tent courts on the Mexican side of the border. This lack of access to due process resulted in a significant number of asylum claims being denied, further marginalizing these individuals and undermining the integrity of the asylum system. Critics on social media and in public discourse have also highlighted the adverse effects of these policies. For example, hashtags such as #EndFamilySeparation and #KeepFamiliesTogether trended on platforms like Twitter, amplifying stories of separated families and calling for policy reform. Social media campaigns often feature heart-wrenching images and videos of children crying as they were taken from their parents, galvanizing public opinion against the Trump administration's immigration policies. In response to these criticisms, proponents of the Trump administration's policies argued that stringent border controls were necessary to deter illegal immigration and maintain national security. However, these arguments often lacked substantive evidence to justify the human costs. Associated with such measures, academic research provides additional insights into the broader implications of these policies. Keck and Losada 2021 argue that the Trump administration's border wall project and associated policies represent an advanced form of authoritarian neoliberalism. By framing migrants and refugees as economic and political threats, the administration justified the expansion of state power to discipline border populations. This rhetoric not only marginalized migrant communities, but also reinforced xenophobic sentiments within the broader U.S. population. The authors further contend that these policies were instrumental in advancing a populist agenda that prioritized the interests of capital accumulation over human rights and social justice. Despite these critiques, supporters of the Trump administration's policies frequently invoked concerns about national security and economic stability to defend the border wall project. For instance, social media users and political commentators cited the need to prevent drug trafficking and reduce the strain on public resources as key justifications for stricter immigration controls. However, these arguments often overlooked empirical evidence, suggesting that most drug smuggling occurs through legal ports of entry, and that immigrants contribute positively to the U.S. economy. Keck and Losada, 2021. Furthermore, some proponents argued that the MPP and ZTP policies were necessary to address an overwhelmed asylum system. However, studies have shown that these policies did little to alleviate systemic issues, and instead created additional logistical and humanitarian challenges. For example, the American Immigration Council reported that the backlog of asylum cases in U.S. immigration courts increased significantly during the Trump administration. Despite the implementation of these restrictive measures, this part of the analysis underscores the significant social impacts of the Trump administration's border wall policy, particularly in terms of exacerbating human rights violations and marginalizing migrant communities. By implementing policies such as the ZTP and MPP, the administration created a humanitarian crisis that drew widespread condemnation from human rights organizations, social media users, and academic researchers alike. The consequences of these policies continue to reverberate, highlighting the need for comprehensive immigration reform that prioritizes human dignity and social justice. This section's conclusion is that the Trump administration's border wall policy, as exemplified by the ZTP and MPP, not only failed to address the root causes of migration, but also inflicted severe harm on vulnerable populations. These policies underscore the broader societal and political challenges associated with using authoritarian measures to manage complex issues such as migration. By examining these impacts, we gain a deeper understanding of the urgent need for policies that uphold human rights and promote equitable solutions to immigration challenges. Trump's border wall policy represents a profound disruption to ecosystems across the U.S. Mexico border region, one of the most biologically diverse areas in North America. As the third and final argument, supporting the assertion that this policy has had significant and lasting negative impacts. This section will delve deeply into the environmental consequences of the border wall. By drawing upon scholarly research, expert testimony, and empirical evidence, we will demonstrate how the wall fragments habitats, threatens biodiversity, and disrupts critical ecological processes. Additionally, common criticisms and counterarguments will be addressed, including those presented in online discourse and media, to build a comprehensive understanding of the policy's ecological ramifications. The U.S. Mexico border is not just a geopolitical divide. It is also a natural corridor where wildlife, rivers, and ecosystems converge. Stretching across deserts, grasslands, mountains, and wetlands. This region supports an extraordinary variety of plant and animal species. According to Trump's border wall pledge threatens delicate desert ecosystems. Owens, 2016. This area includes some of the highest levels of biodiversity in both the United States and Mexico. Species such as jaguars, bighorn sheep, ocelots, and black bears rely on the ability to move freely across the border for mating, migration, and maintaining genetic diversity. The border wall, however, acts as a physical barrier that fragments these habitats and disrupts wildlife movement. Bighorn sheep, for instance, live in small, widely dispersed groups. Their survival depends on maintaining connections with other populations to prevent inbreeding and ensure access to resources. Clinton Epps, a wildlife biologist at Oregon State University, has pointed out that breaking these connections could lead to population decline and eventual extinction. Similarly, black bears, which were extirpated from West Texas in the past, only began re-establishing populations in the 1990s through cross-border movement. The wall threatens to reverse this progress by isolating U.S. populations from their counterparts in Mexico. Birds are not immune to the wall's effects, either. While many assume that birds can simply fly over barriers, species like pygmy owls and roadrunners, which fly low to the ground, face significant challenges. Pygmy owls, in particular, are known to rarely ascend above 4.5 meters in flight, with wall heights ranging from 6 to 10 meters. Their movement is effectively blocked, leading to fragmented populations and disrupted breeding patterns. The wall thus disproportionately impacts species with limited flight capabilities or terrestrial movement patterns. One of the most overlooked but critical consequences of the border wall is its impact on water systems. Rivers such as the Rio Grande, San Pedro, and Colorado are vital for both human communities and wildlife. These waterways provide essential resources for species survival, serve as migration corridors, and support riparian ecosystems that are uniquely adapted to arid desert climates. The wall's construction disrupts these natural water systems by blocking rivers, altering sediment flow, and preventing the exchange of nutrients. Sergio Avila Villegas, a conservation scientist from the Arizona Sonora Desert Museum, has highlighted how water crossings unite ecosystems across borders. If we block the water, it affects nature on a much more fundamental level, he explains. By obstructing rivers and streams, the wall severs these vital ecological links, resulting in degraded habitats downstream. Wetlands, which are particularly sensitive to changes in water flow, face long-term deterioration, further threatening already endangered species that depend on these environments. Additionally, the physical infrastructure of the wall exacerbates the impact of human activity near border regions. Bright lights, noise pollution, and increased traffic during and after construction have significantly degraded habitat quality. Species that are sensitive to disturbances, such as jaguars and ocelots, are likely to avoid areas near the wall, further reducing their available habitat. The U.S. Mexico borderlands are home to numerous threatened and endangered species. Jaguars, for instance, are classified as near-threatened globally, but have small, genetically linked populations in the United States that depend on movement across the border. A continuous wall would isolate these populations, making them more vulnerable to extinction. Similarly, the ocelot, a medium-sized wildcat, has U.S. populations numbering fewer than 100 individuals. The loss of genetic exchange with Mexican populations could lead to inbreeding and reduced adaptability. The wall's construction also impacts lesser-known species, such as the Mexican gray wolf and Sonoran pronghorn. Both species are already at risk due to habitat loss and human activity. By further fragmenting their habitats, the wall increases the likelihood of local extinctions. For example, the Sonoran pronghorn relies on large ranges of uninterrupted habitat to forage and evade predators. The border wall cuts through these ranges, making it harder for individuals to find food and reproduce successfully. Avila Villegas and Epps have also raised concerns about the lack of baseline data on wildlife populations prior to the construction of earlier border barriers. Without this data, it is difficult to fully quantify the wall's impact. However, anecdotal evidence, such as photographs of stressed mountain lions running alongside barriers, underscores the disruption caused to wildlife. Critics of the ecological argument often suggest that border walls are necessary for national security, and that their environmental impacts are either exaggerated or justified by the benefits they provide. Some argue that technology, such as wildlife corridors or alternative fencing designs, can mitigate environmental harm. However, these claims fail to address the scale of ecological disruption caused by a continuous physical barrier. For instance, while wildlife corridors have been proposed as a solution, they are insufficient for species that require large, uninterrupted ranges or whose movement patterns are not well understood. Conservation experts emphasize that preserving natural landscapes in their entirety is more effective than attempting mitigation after the fact. Furthermore, the assertion that the wall improves border security is not supported by evidence. Studies, such as those cited in PLOS 1 McCallum et al. 2014, have found that border barriers have little impact on human movement, while causing significant harm to wildlife. Social media discourse often downplays the ecological costs of the border wall, focusing instead on its symbolic value or purported economic benefits. However, these arguments neglect the long-term consequences of habitat fragmentation and biodiversity loss. Conservation organizations, such as the Center for Biological Diversity, have repeatedly sued the federal government to protect endangered species in the borderlands, highlighting the urgency of addressing these issues. The environmental consequences of Trump's border wall policy are both profound and enduring. By fragmenting habitats, disrupting water systems, and threatening biodiversity, the wall has caused irreparable harm to one of North America's most ecologically rich regions. While political and social aspects of the policy remain hotly debated, the ecological costs are unequivocal and demand immediate attention. Moving forward, it is crucial for policymakers to recognize that effective border security does not necessitate sacrificing biodiversity and ecological health. Alternative approaches, such as technological surveillance systems and cross-border conservation initiatives, should be prioritized to balance security needs with environmental preservation. By addressing these challenges proactively, it is possible to protect both national interests and the natural heritage of the U.S. Mexico borderlands. The border wall policy under the Trump administration had far-reaching impacts across political, social, and environmental dimensions. This policy, aimed at curbing illegal immigration and enhancing national security, sparked heated debates and left lasting consequences for communities and ecosystems along the U.S. Mexico border. Politically, the border wall policy polarized public opinion and intensified immigration debates domestically and internationally. Supporters viewed the policy as a necessary measure to strengthen national security and reduce illegal crossings. However, critics argued that the wall symbolized isolationism and failed to address the root causes of migration, such as poverty and violence in Central America. The policy also strained diplomatic relations with Mexico, as funding disagreements and accusations of disrespect dominated bilateral discussions. Socially, the border wall exerted significant pressure on migrant populations, particularly asylum seekers. The policy coincided with stricter immigration enforcement measures, leading to family separations and overcrowded detention facilities. These practices were widely criticized for violating human rights and creating humanitarian crises. Furthermore, the wall disrupted binational communities that historically relied on cross-border interaction for cultural and economic exchange, causing societal fragmentation in these regions. Environmentally, the construction of the border wall inflicted severe damage on fragile ecosystems. The wall bisected wildlife habitats, impeding the natural migration of species such as jaguars and ocelots. Moreover, construction activities led to soil erosion, waterway disruption, and deforestation, further degrading the environment. Conservationists warned that these changes could cause irreversible harm to biodiversity and undermine decades of environmental preservation efforts. In conclusion, while the border wall policy aimed to address immigration and security concerns, it also brought about substantial political, social, and environmental challenges. These outcomes underscore the complexities of balancing national security with humanitarian and ecological considerations. As the debate on immigration policy continues, it remains crucial to seek solutions that address these interconnected issues holistically. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to hit like and subscribe to the channel. We'd love to hear your thoughts and feedback, so feel free to share them in the comments section. Let's continue exploring American history together through papers in the next episode.